All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and I appreciate the opportunity for Sergeant Major McAdoo and I to talk to you about HRC. Our intent, and he's in the office next door, obviously COVID mitigation and all the craziness that goes with that. But what we would like to do is very briefly go through our slides, and most of you are familiar with a lot of this stuff, except for the slide that has the bridge on there and kind of why we're going from a data pool to a data-rich environment. I'm going to talk a little bit to that one, but the intent for the Sergeant Major and I is to open it up for questions. We have all of the experts and everybody out there in the field that's actually executing, all of the things that we do here for distribution in the Army and on promotion and all that stuff. So I really want to leave some time for questions at the end. So here in about 30 minutes, cut me off and we'll go to questions regardless of where me and the Sergeant Major are. So just a little bit about me, since most of you don't know me, and I apologize for not being at Fort Jackson. Sergeant Major and I would love to be there, but with all the stuff going on, I think it's better for us for COVID mitigation and everything else to be here and do it virtually, but obviously suboptimal, because I would like to have met you, everybody that's attending in person. I would have liked to have met you in person and had those conversations and social last night and all the rest of that stuff. Sergeant Major, you got any introductory introductions?
No, sir. I just defer to you until we get a little further along to ask questions. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so a lot of you probably are questioning why a pilot is the commander of HRC, and just so you know, I don't know why that happened, but I do have a personnel background. I'm probably, since the Adjutant school went away probably, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago, wherever it was, I am an Adjutant school graduate from Fort Bend Harris. I've been an S1 3 times in the Army. My functional area back before we changed to what we currently have was 41, a personnelist. So I've had assignments throughout my career that were personnel related, human resource management related. So I think that background, and because of some of the things some of the very hard decisions the chief had to make with a very limited supply of AG officers, and the requirements for the change that he wants to make in accordance with his people strategy, he was basically a couple of AG people short to be able to distribute in the way he probably would have liked to. So that's why I'm here. And I have been involved in talent management since the very first conference when Secretary Esper was Secretary of the Army and General Milley was the chief and General McCombo was the vice. So in my capacity as the DCG at USASOC, I was appointed by my boss. He goes, I want you in every meeting. I want to make sure we are a part of the Army's change and we can help them from the RSOC perspective, the 3 RSOC MOSs, kind of help them see it from our perspective. So I've been doing this now for about 3 years, a little bit, 3.5 years, as far as being part of where the Army wants to go and change. So that's kind of how I ended up here. But before we start the brief, I'm not an expert, but I do have experts here working with me to do the distribution mission for the Army. Next slide. Okay. All right. So here are the experts. The only one that's not an expert is the dude at the top. So we've got a DCG at HRC. General Babcock is an extremely experienced, a very diverse background, and just a phenomenal leader and officer. So she is my DCG here, and I know a lot of you probably haven't had a chance to meet her yet, but she's also the Reserve Personnel Management Director for the Army. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. She's new to this position. She got here basically a month and a half ago, but just a phenomenal officer. OPMD, you got a brief from General Johnson or Colonel Johnson yesterday. Phenomenal leader. He is a no-shit expert in human resources and where we're going. And to continue down the left side of this chart, Colonel Tim Zajac is our Persons D, the Personal Information Systems Director. He is a FA-26. He has a huge responsibility in getting us from a data poor to a data rich environment, and you have no idea how complicated that is unless you're here at HRC or working up at FMD and G1. This is a very, very hard job. Tim's doing a great job, but that's who's doing that for us. And my other real expert, well, I got to talk about a couple of them here, but Command Sergeant Major McAdoo, he is a 42 for life. However, he's been out in the field a lot here over his career. He's been a battalion commander, or battalion command sergeant major. He's been a brigade command sergeant major of a sustainment brigade. He knows this business like nobody I've ever met, and he's really insightful in all of his comments. So I would encourage you, if you have a question, you've got people you can go to, but he is a really good resource. If it's something that's like, hey, this doesn't make sense, or this is kind of sticky, how do we change this? Do we fix it? Sergeant Major McAdoo is probably the guy you need to talk to. EPMD, I think you probably all know Colonel McGregor and Sergeant Major Rendon, 42s, crushing it over there. They have a very hard, very, very hard job. And if you look down at the bottom right of the slide, if you look at the military thing, so we've got more people in OPMD military side than we do in EPMD, and yet there's only about 90,000 officers in the United States Army in Compo 1, and then we've got about 385,000 soldiers enlisted in NCO there, and you can see with less people, they're distributing that amount of force. So EPMD, Colonel McGregor, and Sergeant Major Rendon, they are working overtime each and every day along with their entire team to do their mission. And General Rampy, my personal hero, she is probably, just for the people that I know out there, she is the one I count on the most. She is an agent of change. She's very thoughtful. So if you have a good idea and you're a 42 and you don't want to talk to somebody else, I would personally reach out to General Rampy. She can give you the background, and she's a very mature, thoughtful professional, and she's going to help the Army get to where we need to go in the future. And again, back to the bottom right of this chart, you can see the layout here. We've got about 3,700 people. You see that we've got 1,800 civilians in HRC, and then about 1,000 contractors. But that's a lot of folks to be able to execute the distribution mission that we have. Anything to add, Sergeant Major?
Yes, sir. Thank you. As the CG said, obviously we have a huge team here with all the expertise that we need within the building. Please understand that this is our squad, but this is the part of the HR enterprise that works for you. We work absolutely for you. And as the CG stated, we are an agent of change. We're not a team that likes to say, okay, let's continue to do this way because we have always done it. If it doesn't make sense, obviously we reach out to our experts within the building and to try to make sense of it, or to come back with a course of action for us to better support the field better. At the top, obviously, the CG9, I use the term a lot of times, I am one hell of a traffic director. We may not know the exact answer to the question, but we know exactly where to go to within this building to get our experts to help you all out and doing your job on a daily basis. So absolutely, please continue to use us in our travels out to the Army. Obviously, we talk to the senior mission leadership, the CGs, and the division and above sergeant majors for the purpose of letting them know what it is that the HR community can do for them, but also letting them know what it is that we need them to have, to have their support on to enforce some of the policies and procedures stuff that we are pushing from our building. So absolutely wonderful, great to be here. And CG and I are happy on a daily basis to know that if we see something that doesn't make sense, we may not be able to change it, but we can absolutely influence the change on things that we cannot control. So please, everyone in this HR enterprise, please use our team here to help better support your mission at your level. That's all I have, sir.
Okay, so here is, you can see the assigned strength, you can see our organization and the human capital enterprise that makes all of this happen. But a lot of people aren't aware of everything that HRC does, to include me being the commander of the IRR. Some people don't know that. We have the RPMD, General Babcock, and her team that helps me interact with the IRR and the upcoming changes, hopefully, to how we execute that. But if you look at the numbers of all this stuff, this limited number of folks, 3,700 people, is making those distribution and connected stuff to all of our veterans. That's a lot of work. for 3,700 people. And I won't go into detail, but I'd encourage you to keep this slide just so you can kind of see the scope of what HRC is responsible for. Any questions on this slide? And by the way, everybody out there, if you got a question or you have something to add, unmute, put your hand up in Teams, and if you're in the room, just walk to a mic, and we'll field questions as we go on these individual topics before we get to your general questions. IPSA, the topic I'm sure that all of your commanders, if you're out there as a G1, S1 out there in the field, you probably get a lot of questions, and you can see in the cutover timeline, we haven't officially changed it. Obviously, there was an article that came out 2 days ago. I think between Colonel Eggers, the chief of IPSA, the PM office, Colonel Williams, they're all kind of figuring out what the new timeline is, because right now I don't believe we can achieve the timeline that's on there. But this is, just so you know, this is the #1 priority at HRC, is getting this thing up and running. We've got a pretty big piece of it. You know, we own a lot of the data that needs to be integrated and interacted with the IPSA system. So I've given direction to all of our directors that this is our #1 priority. We've got to get this thing over the line. And I'm sure that some of you have done the training associated with it, the HR professional training, you know, I think we're going to get a little bit more time to make sure you're up to speed. Colonel Johnson and his team is really looking, because he obviously was the IPSA director prior to Colonel Eggers. So he's really familiar with this. But if you have any issues with IPSA from the field, whether it's the training or questions, you got Colonel Eggers, but you also have us here at HRC that can help you. And so why are we doing this? You know, that's the thing that we don't answer very well in some of our stuff recently. Now, a couple of years ago, I think people understood the why. I think that's kind of dissipated over time, and now that it's here and we're getting ready to field this thing, people want to know why we're doing it. In the current form, if you've ever heard General McConville or General Martin of Vice talk about the Army, he talks about the Army. He's not talking about Compo 1, the active force. He's talking about the Army, which includes all 3 compos. This system allows the Army to be one Army in a system. Sometimes, I guess, when I talk to folks, it's a little bit lost on them that this is a huge change. Our ability to see the Army in one system, all 3 compos. It's not right now for the IRR, but think about the ability to see the Army collectively in one system in a more data-rich environment across all 3 compos. It really gives some abilities that we didn't have in the current system, and certainly haven't had in the past. That will be good for the Army as we move forward into a very dynamic global environment where the requirements change a little bit more rapidly than they did during the Cold War, which is when most of the stuff that we do now was created. So that's why we're doing it. The 25-point talent management profile, and I know that in the training it kind of talks about it a little bit, but that's going to be key to how we see the Army. So that will enable you as HR professionals to see more about your structure, on the structure side, the requirements of that structure, and then using this 25-point profile, you can see who fits in the right seat on the right bus at the right time better than we can in the current system. Because as you guys know, and you all execute this every day, when you submit the MRR, you submit very bland requirements. I need a major of engineer. I need a sergeant first class of infantry. Whatever it is, that's kind of how we see people. Whereas in this 25-point profile, it's going to be a little bit more rich in data, so you can query the system. You can hire people that have more than just those skills being in one branch and at this grade. You can see it more holistically. So that's a critical part to this thing. Now, General McConville was and he picked 25, and all the IPSA folks that are online, they'll tell you that we can expand that to a lot greater number than 25, but that allows us to see the Army better. The other part is, you know, IPSA Release 3 is one part. So here in a couple of years, we are going to implement Release 4, which will integrate the pay portion of this and all of the things that make it easier to audit, to see, to correct. Hopefully, in this this automated world, and just so you know, the Air Force is going to this here in about 3 weeks. So they're a little bit ahead of us on integrating the pay portion into their version of HRC and the personnel system. So we'll see how that goes. You know, we obviously release 2 went to the Guard, and we have some lessons learned which have been incorporated in how we're going to do this release 3 for the total force. But this pay thing is a pretty big deal. And again, having all of that data in one system, the ability to link things like positions with pay, if it's SDAP and all those things, location pay, right now that's an outside the system analog system that integrates that stuff in there through DFAS. It's going to link this better. So at least up there in the G1, you know, and you know, Mr. Wallace up there, they have a really hard job every month because they got to pay everybody. And the system that does that is a system that's probably not changed to a big degree in about 25 years. So this is that's why we're doing this IPSA thing. And you can see all the things down at the bottom. If you've attended the training, you're kind of familiar with all that stuff. Any questions on IPSA? Colonel Johnson, anything to add?
Hey, Colonel Eggers, come to the mic, please. Hey, sir, how you doing?
Well played, Greg.
Good morning, sir. So, interesting enough, I was going to ask Marcus if I could have a couple minutes on IPSA because, you know, one of the things is I'm going to put there's an elephant in the room, obviously, about our schedule. So, I'm not going to get ahead of senior leaders, but we already delayed the limited user test. So, we should have messaging out in the next couple weeks that'll tell the field, the force, Congress, you know, where we're headed for the future for IPSA. But we're going to get this done. So we want everyone to keep on doing their training. That doesn't stop. And then where we really need your help is keeping momentum on the field to get that done. And just a couple points on what we have fielded this to the National Guard. Their pay accuracy rates are over 99% for the transactions we're sending to DJMS. That's proof that we need this for the entire force. They're able to see folks across the states and at the NGB level that they weren't able to before. Another good reason that we need this for our talent management capability. And then we really need to just make sure we stay focused. So I need help from the field with squashing all of those dimers rumors. This isn't dimers. We're going to get this done, and we just need to stay focused to get it done.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Sure, can I say a couple things about HRC and IPSA?
Absolutely, go ahead.
So for the last couple of years, there probably was a little bit of pushback from HRC on IPSA. That's like been killed. You know, OP in the game fully. EP in the game fully. Persons D in the game fully. Massive change is good, and this vehicle is meant to get us there in a whole lot of different ways. So our requirement inside HRC, 100% HR Pro training, so that's being executed by every member of EPOP, and a lot of folks' eyes are being opened because now that they're seeing the system work in that net training, they're really starting to see how that would connect to how at the enterprise level we're going to execute talent in a modernized future way. So just a lot of good work on the team. But I will tell you the central piece, and let's get a little techie here in a second. The central piece of IT had to be completely 100% redone at HRC. Massive job. And so we've organized internally to pull talent from the entire command to really go after that problem set to support go live, but then also to support kind of a 10 times modernization goal for HRC. So you move away from the COBOL systems of the 80s that we're using today. And sorry, Chief Hickman and others, you guys are real used to that. But it's time to move on from those systems that we've used since 83, 84. It's just time to move on. So it's really good to have a CG and battle buddies on either side of me at HRC that really want to drive change. And so we're going to drive change for the Army. We're all in to make IPSA happen. We're going to get the data right. Right. When you think about IPSA not going into LUT, it's really about data conversions. So taking the old data from those COBOL systems and transitioning it into PeopleSoft, that's really where the problems Rebecca is facing right now and attacking it. So, getting through the wall first, you usually get bloodied. It's like my favorite quote from Moneyball. If you've not watched that movie, go watch that movie. Right now, we're a little bloody because we're going through the wall. But what we need from the AG Corps is 100% support of IPSA. 100% support of IPSA. So if your inclination is to kind of comment negatively, check yourself in the mirror. You're probably not a real AG professional. We need to modernize. We need to support this. We just need to get through the wall, get a little bloodied on the way, and put this into the end zone for the Army, because what's going to come after that is a lot better than where we're at today. How we support soldiers in talent, in the records, and then in their pay. This is all for the right reasons, all good stuff. So just ask your support as we continue to drive forward. Sir, back to you.
Thanks, Greg. Great comments, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because it was one of my notes. Is we do have to have everybody on board. We want to make this system better, and as you experience problems or whatever it might be with interaction with IPSA, unemotionally make sure that we capture those so that we can have a record of it up here, both with the G1 and here at HRC, and obviously with Colonel Eggers, because this thing's coming. I need everybody on the same wavelength of this is going to happen. This is a good thing for the Army, because it is going to be a good thing for the Army. If you knew the Army prior to some of our automation that we had, and how Milperson, prior to being PERSCOM, how they executed, they were shooting a lot in the dark in here, because you have the requirements, and back then it was a little bit different. We had about 400,000 active component soldiers outside of CONUS back then. So all the orders processes, how we filled based on vacancies, those systems had a lot of lag time in them. So you kind of got to get ahead of it. And but now, like Colonel Johnson said, and Colonel Eggers, this thing is going to allow us to do things we could never do before. I think it's revolutionary for the HR systems that the Army and Congress looks at. So please, everybody, get on board. All right, next slide.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Just to continue to support and pile onto this, obviously, as people being the number one priority, the IPSA, the thing that we're going through with IPSA right now, absolutely validates that people are the number one priority. I'll tell you, all the senior leaders that we have here in this conference from the HR community, we are the champions for this change. And like I say, yes, now with the looks like some change is going to be with the timeline. We should not pile on like everyone else is and try to talk to it about the way you talked about dimers. But this is not easy. It's going to take a while to change. But like I said, when you look at the end state of IPSA, it's going to fix a lot of our problems. And those who have been deployed, I remember the time when I was deployed before to Iraq. Obviously, as HR professionals, our job has always been people first. It's always been to take care of people. But it was really disheartening to me as a brigade level one, when I'm down there trying to take care of everyone that's deployed with us, but then I have a reserve unit that is there with me, and I can't see their systems. So when they come to me or come to my S1 shop and ask for certain things, we have to tell them to kind of, hey, try to call back to your unit back home. We can't help you. This system right here is going to allow us now to be able to see their stuff too. Among other things, as CG pointed out, when it comes to 25-point profile, all the extra things, the extra talents that personnel have, we can identify those and better talent manage when it comes to shaping our information to supporting our command. But everyone just understand, even though we are hitting some obstacles, does not mean that it is going to stop. We still got to continue to push it forward. And even during our transition phase, work is not going to be easy. Work is going to be hard. We have to work a little harder to do some things that may have been easier in the past, but we're working harder now in the present, so that way it's that much easier when it comes to the future. So even when we talked about earlier about the brownout phase and cutover, like for those who used to go to the field a lot of times, you go to the field, you got to figure out, how do I still continue to track the battle? How do I still continue to support my commander in an analog format? Because I don't have all the systems. So it will be a little bit harder, but once you get through that transition phase on the other end, it all pays off. So please, for our end, for all of our HR professionals, continue to push. Yes, we may now be at a pause. We may now have an obstacle, but that's all it is. It is just an obstacle. It is not something that's going to stop or going to deter us from going forward and finishing out and seeing the full implementation of IPSA. That's all I got, sir.
Thanks, Sergeant Major. Great points. All right, next slide. And we're going to blaze through these next two. Army talent management. There we go. You got the slide. Next slide. All right, so this is a talent management, and so why we are going to this new system. And I'm just going to highlight one thing because I know I've only got 20 minutes left, and I want to get to your questions. But I'm going to give you a couple of vignettes on things in the system that we need to have in the future that we don't currently have. So if you look at the bridges there, the talent alignment process, AIM, ASCM, assessments, that's a career of assessments. It's not just BCAP, it's Project Athena through CAC that's pushing that down. Flexible career paths. Through all of our study on personnel systems, the society, the future of work, one of the things that people who are entering the military today hold dear is being able to choose their own adventure and have a flexible career path. In the current form, and all of you are, just like I am, a product of this, is when you entered the Army, whether you're an NCO or you're an officer, you know, that decision about what you were going to do for your whole career was made way in the rearview mirror. That is not palatable to the current generation in an all-volunteer force that's joining the Army. So we really got to look at that. Promotions and selections, we'll probably have a few changes in those things, and you can see it on the officer side with the brevet thing and how we're looking at rank a little bit differently. The Congress gave us this authorization in August of 18. So things are changing, but I'm just going to go scalable. So one of the things that we don't have the ability to do in our Army, and having lived through a couple of RIFs, reductions in force, if we can't see the Army very well, you make some poor decisions ultimately. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So coming out of Vietnam, we had a huge reduction in force in the active component. And so they couldn't see the Army very well. So what did they do? They went with what they could see at Milperson, which, you know, back then was in Alexandria. Like, okay, well, we have to downsize this much. How many people do we have that are regular Army, both on NCO and officers, and how many people are reservists? Because with the old obligation voluntary system, you could serve up to 20 years, go all the way to lieutenant colonel, doesn't matter, in an OBV status. So what they did is like, okay, let's whack all of the Army Reserve people. And that got them down almost to the number that they needed. And then they had to have a couple of regular Army people that they were going to process out, whether it was make them retire, whatever it is. But think about that. And I lived here at Fort Knox, and this was in 1972, 73. We had this enormous reduction in force. And I lived here on Fort Knox in housing. My dad was an armored dude. But on my street, my father was the only regular Army officer on my street. And there were probably, I don't know, 15, 20 families that lived with. We were the only, 6 months after they decided to do this RIP, we were the only family that lived on our street. And it's not that my dad was better than anybody living on the street, it's that he was regular Army. And that wasn't a good thing. So, and having, you know, grown up and been around these people, we let some real talent go. And the next little personal vignette I have is after Desert Storm, we had this peace dividend, we were reducing the force. We waived every ADSO in the Army and said, hey, if you want to get out, get out. Because we don't want to force people out, let people out, which is, I think, a good framework. But for the health of the Army, it was horrible. So the reason I'm a general officer in the Army today is because all the really good people got out right after Desert Storm. And that's not false humility. I'm being completely honest. The people that were in my year group back then, aviation people, I knew all of the really good ones, and all of them to a person got out. That's not a good thing. Not that I'm not going to try hard and everything, but I promise you in all of my career, I've not been as good or could have been as good as these folks that got out because we didn't scale it properly. Why did we do that way? Well, in the system, we couldn't see talent. So if the framework is we're going to keep the most talented, that's a totally different solution set to the problem of downsizing the Army. So what IPSA with the 25-point profile, all these things and all this career of assessments will allow the Army to make a better decision as we modulate, because it kind of, breathes in and out on the size of the Army over time, but it allows you to do it better. So that's my only thing. Next slide. Aim 2, okay, so up front, I'll just apologize because what we did with Aim 2 and ASCM not quite to the same degree because we haven't pushed the hiring authorities out there to the field, but in Aim 2 we did. We gave you not one extra person, we gave you through a lot of hard work here at HRC and up in the Pentagon, kind of, hey, how we see you operating this thing, but for all of you, and all of you felt this pain, you just had an enormous workload with no resources placed on you to make this happen. But I think most of you are familiar. I was in the conversation yesterday, listened to it about how we best practices for AIM and all the rest of that stuff. We're getting better. I can tell you that this marketplace, this regulated market that the Army has developed, enables a lot of things in the future. To get us away from an industrial age system to a more modern system that allows people to make decisions for them and their families about the opportunities, where they'd like to go. Not that it always works out, but the feedback we've received from the field out there running, these markets, is at a minimum, people are happy with the transparency in the system. It makes it a little bit less opaque, because in the former thing, like me as a pilot, like, hey, listen, we've got it's time for you to move. We got to send you somewhere. And the two places you can go is 17th Aviation Brigade in Korea or go to 2ID. But they didn't say, hey, here are all the opportunities. Where would you like to go? Let me compete for those jobs, all those things. This is a better system. So I know it's a pain. It's a huge pain in the neck for everybody involved in human resource management to do this, but it is the future, and we are looking at how we provide resources, whether it's people, whether it's a position on the G1 staff at the brigades, to help commanders and you, HR professionals, execute the same thing. All right, ask him. You want to hit this one, Sergeant Major? Because we need.
Yes, sir. Obviously, this is a great tool that's sponsored up here within the command. The biggest concern that I have as we do our travels and as I communicate with senior mission leadership is, for some reason, they are believing that because of ASCM, when we put out percentages from HRC saying that, hey, 80% of the personnel got what it is that they wanted somehow a lot of senior mission, the majority of them are interpreting that to mean that they are not getting the field that they need in their organizations or on their post because soldiers didn't preference it. So please ensure that in the messaging of ASCM, know that it is a model. It is a great model. It increases transparency to the field, to the soldiers, to find out what positions are out there, even though there may only be one of them. It increases predictability with the inclusion of the YMAP. And to me, as a former strength manager, I love the concept when the YMAP came in, because before it was kind of, I kind of assumed McAdoo's been on station for a while, so he's probably going to come on orders. So what's great about the YMAP is now you have that predictability at your level, and you can do true strength management. And here within the building with HRC, as the EPMD briefed yesterday in one of the meetings, that YMAP date is a contract. It is a contract with the soldier to let them know this is the date that you will be looked at for assignment, or a conversation starter as you use it. So I will please, as you communicate with your leadership, please just make sure they understand that a preference in ASCM, yes, we want that, but preference does not take precedence over readiness. So there's all the questions that I get from a lot of senior leaders is the same thing. I'm not filled because no one preferences it, but whenever we go back and look at the numbers for the post or for the unit, the numbers are there. But I think it's maybe because we like to say that, a high amount of personnel get what they want. They interpret it as we're not getting what we want because they're not coming here. So please just, from your foxhole, please just ensure that you educate your leadership on that and encourage. Also encourage the soldiers. The EPMD does a good job of sending out updates when we're in the market of how many personnel that went in and preferenced their assignments. Please encourage them to go in and preference their assignments. And like I say, it doesn't mean that they're going to get the number one assignment. There's all kind of different factors as far as deciding which number it is, but at least they know what it is. And just going back to, to my scar tissue in the military too, my whole time, every job that I've had in the military, I had no idea what I was going to next. I had no idea what was even out there. I could, as an HR professional, I could go in the system and kind of look and see what open recs were out there, but I couldn't see the entire picture. So just being able to having the ability now for a soldier to go into a system and kind of see what positions are out there, makes it a little easier for them to decide whether or not they want to, stay in the military, stay in the Army, or want to go somewhere. So please just continue to educate your leadership on exactly what SEM is, how great it is for the soldiers, and how much it helps you all when it comes to strength management at your levels.
Thanks, Sergeant Major. And like Sergeant Major said, we need your help. All right. We got about 15 minutes left, so now it's open to any question you might have for HRC, and we have experts here that can answer those questions. So please, if you got a question, either raise your hand, move to the microphone, and we'll answer them at this time.
Good morning, sir. It's Lieutenant Colonel Lucarelli, AG proponent. Chief, how are you doing today?
Terrific.
Yes, sir. The question I have, I know us here at the schoolhouse, we're really digging into doctrine and where the Army's kind of heading as far as roles of division and corps and the ASCCs, especially if we kind of pivot away from a COIN environment to now a LISCO environment. With that said, with the Army kind of again pivoting away from a brigade-centric fight to now utilizing the divisions as fighting formations and the unit of action, especially during LISCO, coupled with, I think, with a lot of the projected casualties we're going to maybe expect during LISCO and with the increased demand for replacements, do you see the Army maybe needing to kind of reassess brigade level manning, or do you see that kind of moving forward as still the preferred method for distribution?
Hey, it's a great question. It's a great point. Because if you forecast a need to go to large-scale ground combat operations, and the Army has made that decision that we need to be prepared for that, if you look at the current structure on the human resource side, we are undermanned, in my opinion, in critical positions. So if you look at how we organize for combat, if the BCT is not going to be the unit of action, and we're going to move that to divisions so that we have combined armed operations where you can maneuver brigades, because that's where that occurs, then you're going to have to do things like have, and I'm sure some of you may have been involved in a SACP, the support area command post, basically the rear division main. If you try to man that thing with the current structure, it's virtually impossible. But it's critical, especially on the human resource side. As you look at replacement operations and just day-to-day, consolidating things so commanders at the division and above level can make informed decisions on maneuver, I think we're undermanned. So again, as we go down these roads, and your proponent and your commandant have been very vocal, rightfully, on, hey, here, if you're changing the condition, we have to relook how we're resourced, manned, and the equipment associated with it to be able to execute that mission. Because you are absolutely right. In the current form, we push all that stuff down to BCTs where it's less effective. Not that they are overmanned, but the role of those functions within a BCT are going to change. Because in the past, those things that we have relegated to the brigade have to be at division, because they have to, in limited resources, you got to make those priority decisions, and you can't do it at the brigade level. So we really, in the HR community, we got to take a hard look at those. And I know you guys are crushing it down there in the proponent office, but all of us in the HR community have to be a voice for that and pile on when you run out of people. Because if you look at how many people you have down there doing that work, it's fairly limited compared to the force that we have places like HRC, the G1, the DMPM, all these places. We got to make sure we're at the right place at the right time to have that voice heard in a realistic way as we do some of these TTXs, because this is my personal opinion, we've kind of done a hand wave because we really didn't have to focus on it in COIN, and the strategic support area was not at risk as you're supporting Iraq, Afghanistan, and all these places. But in large-scale ground combat operations, that assumption goes away. The support area the strategic support area is going to be challenged. So if you have your replacements in CONUS, you may not be able to do replacement operations to get into theater if that's contested. So I appreciate the point, and let us know how we can help you get that into the doctrine, the structure, all those things for the future.
Sir, Sergeant Major, good morning. This is Colonel Angela Jenkins. Would like to get your thoughts on talent management. And I say that because you have leaders who have been around for a while, general officers and CSMs who believe talent management is having the ability to put people where they want. And then you have leaders that believe talent management is the G1's responsibility of making sure that they have the right people in the right places. And so sometimes it can be a little challenging for the G1s. And I just like to kind of get your perspective on a message that we could use to say what talent management is and what talent management isn't. Over.
Hey, Colonel Jenkins, great point. And we have a definition for the Army of talent management, but you're right. Below the definition, it gets real squishy. I mean, whose responsibility is it? You know, and how do you execute it? And the marketplace is a piece of it, but from my perspective, holistically, we need the HR folks helping us decide, inform the structure of the Army of the skills that you need in those unique places. Because it's different if you're in the 82nd, where you're for ID, the skills that are required in those organizations, whether it's light, heavy, airborne, not airborne. So if those are loaded in the structure, ultimately they will be, and the G3 is working on the structure side to their force management division, but you can be able to see it. The other thing in talent management for us, at all of our levels, whether it's battalion, brigade, division, corps, you pick it, is we've got to help commanders refine those requirements, whether it's knowledge, skills, behaviors, experience, whatever it is, to put those into positions so that the talent management that you are going to have to do as a human resource management officer or NCO makes more sense. Because right now, some of you are doing really, really good, but you know the ins and outs of this system and this person and this thing to be able to query this and all these 181 disparate databases and systems that we have that does human resource management in the Army that's going down to just a few. But we need to make it one system so everybody has a level playing field on how we do it. So in my opinion, talent management is really going to be the HR community's responsibility to make sure that we're coding the positions correctly for knowledge, skills, behaviors, whether it's an MOS, a skill, whatever it might be, so that we can see it. On the officer side, I think it goes back to that career flexibility. If you have these skills, if we only look at you as an engineer NCO or an engineer officer, an MP officer, you pick it, and yet you have this skill that would be brilliant for this position, if we get the structure right above it, I think you can compete for those positions. And maybe we need to take a look at how we do this 70-year-old system of MOSs, functional areas, that's obviously changed over time, but the basic tenet of how we assign people goes back to the National Security Act, 1947, which part of that was the Officer Management Act, which bled down into the NCO Corps and how we see the Army. So I think change is coming. The baseline, the foundation for that becomes IPSA and how we see the individual soldiers and the structure of the Army for the future based on requirements, inventory, whether it's a deficit or a surplus. I think that's going to go a long way to helping all of us really understand how talent management works. Lieutenant Colonel Glenn, go ahead.
Good morning, sir. Sergeant Major, 32nd AAMC G1. I was, since you brought up the enlisted and assignments, when we were looking at IPSA, I know on the enlisted side it's harder, especially for HR. When they're looking for, has this NCO done G1 plans and ops? Have they done certain positions? But when you look at the MTO, the only thing it says is Senior HR Human Resource Sergeant. So unless the board is actually going to look to verify whether that UIC is a division, brigade, or S1, Corps. How do we help differentiate those enlisted personnel to show that they are, hey, they worked at the G1? Because for us on the officer side, I know currently under EMILPO, we can change it and say battalion S1. But if it's going to stay to what is stated in EMILPO or FMS Web on the MTO, just senior human resource sergeant, how do you know that soldier is the command sergeant major and not the brigade NCOIC? How can we help the enlisted side of the house when they are getting looked at, if we are looking at assignment history, duty titles, when they go in front of the board? I know that was always a concern, because I used to look at the map and see, okay, my NCO needs to be, if he's an E7, needs to be in the G1, but it only said senior human resource sergeant. So how can we help those enlisted personnel better when it comes to them going in front of the board? Over.
Hey, you nailed it. And again, that's why getting this data-rich environment on the structure side, because like you said, right now I really can't see it. And I can dig in, and maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but maybe you're over here. I'd have to go outside of the, what the SRB kind of thing, to the eval system to see what you did, what the responsibilities. But if we have the structure correct, and looking at an SRB, you can see if they have these skills, experiences, and what they did. Again, that goes to the structure side of the Army and how we code those things. And that's a huge lift. And I know you all know this, because you look at this stuff all the time when you're building a MER and all this stuff that we do. It's really opaque. It's like, okay, I need a infantry captain. That doesn't really, okay, whatever. But the infantry captains, one of them's a commander, one's going to be an assistant battalion S3, one of them's going to be we've got to put those things in there so we can see what's required, and then the inventory of officers and NCOs to fill those positions, and make sure that, again, the chief's mission, I'm sure you've read the people strategy, but he wants to retain 80% of the top 50% in any cohort, whether that's an enlisted grade, specialty, officer, that's the target. So we need to be able to make sure that we have visibility on the structure side, so those opportunities are given to our best and brightest, if we want to have the best and brightest at the very top over time. Great question. A lot of work. Sergeant Major, anything to add on that?
Nothing. I'll just type in a question. I thought a while back, and maybe Sergeant Major Atkinson or Schoolhouse can answer. When it comes to identifying those, it sounds like we're talking about as far as for the CD, formerly known as the KD positions. But I thought that the Schoolhouse or proponents was working to identify kind of how to code to show that an enlisted person had completed that CD or KD time.
That is correct, Sergeant Major. Actually, right after this conference, the proponent team here, we have already started the process of looking at each and every one of our enlisted codes and going back in there and truly codifying what that position on the authorization is. If you pull it now, we got over 3,000 enlisted positions on there, and they all either say human resources or senior human resources. So immediately after this conference, that's exactly what me and Colonel Lucarelli is getting after.
On behalf of the Sergeant Major and everyone here at HRC, we are part of your team. And we want to help you and your commander with your mission. So we are partners in this whole thing. Don't hesitate to reach out, especially as we're fielding IPSA. If you've got things really unemotional, hey, this is the impact of this on my organization. It's helpful for us, because we have these engineering change proposals, change requests that we can put in, and they accumulate over time, and then we'll have a new drop of the software and all those things before we get to release 4. Those things are helpful. But thanks for our time today. Have a great day and enjoy a nice morning there at Fort Jackson. Soldiers first.